we continue?
Please.
Okay. This name called Susan Hughes, this name?
What was that? Just push that mic aside.
The testimony you're about to give in this matter be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Yes.
Ma'am, could you please state and spell your name for the benefit of the court reporter?
Susan Hughes, Hughes.
Ms. Hughes, did you know Anthony Huber?
Yes.
How did you know him?
I am his great aunt.
And
His grandmother was my oldest sister.
And how did you come to know Anthony?
Well, my niece is his mother.
So did you know him from when he was a child?
Yes.
And would you have considered yourself close to Mr. Huber?
Yeah, even when he was a child, we had kind of a special connection. But I was born in Kenosha. I moved away, came back in 2011, and from that time, we became even closer.
Now, you said you had a special connection. What do you mean by that?
He was a redhead. I used to be a redhead. He was, his immediate family, they were all blondes. So he kind of gravitated to me at family gatherings and things, even though when he was a child, I really only saw him, holidays and when I visited Kenosha, so, 4 or 5 times a year. But even then he would gravitate towards me because I could talk to him about things he was interested in. I mean, we shared interest in art and music and computers, Star Wars, things that little boys like to talk about.
So you said you would see him in Kenosha. Did Anthony grow up in Kenosha?
Yes, he was born here and went to school here.
Do you know if you know any schools he attended here?
Well, he's in the Southport neighborhood, so I think he went there perhaps. I know he was at St. Mark's for a while. And I don't know, would those kids go to Lance maybe for middle school? I'm not sure.
Norm.
I was living in Madison, so I wasn't real connected to what schools he was going to.
So in 2011, you said you moved back to the Kenosha area,
Yes.
and you said you became more close. What do you mean by that?
Well, from that point, I moved back because I had health issues, and both of my sisters did. So I was seeing his grandmother quite frequently, and Anthony was very close to his grandmother. So, I would see him sometimes, once or twice a week. He would call her frequently. She moved in with me actually in 2013, and from that point, we saw Anthony even more. He frequently needed rides to jobs and things, and when she wasn't able to take him, I would take him.
And about how old would Anthony be in this time period?
Well, when I moved
Teenager,
back,
adult?
I think he was like 17, maybe, when I moved back here.
And even back then, did you ever know Anthony Huber to use a skateboard?
Always, always. The skateboard, I must confess, was kind of an annoyance to me because he would, when I first moved back here in 2011, we had a family gathering. We had a dinner in the winter, and I lived close to Penoyer Park. And Anthony arrived in a car. There was a foot of snow on the ground. He walked into my house with a skateboard and was going to, skate on my laminated floors. And I said, you can't skate in the house, and where are you going to skate anyway? Because there's snow on the ground. And he, picked up his skateboard. He went out and he found a place to skate in the snow. I mean, he always, even shortly before he died, when I would take him somewhere, he would know I was picking him up in a car. He was going to go home in a car. He would still have the skateboard in case there was a chance, there was an interesting parking lot somewhere, and he could go out and skate.
To the best of your knowledge, was that his main mode of transportation if he wasn't getting rides from
Yes.
you or someone else?
Yes, he skated sometimes to jobs if I wasn't available to take him there, or one of his friends. He would skate home frequently, quite long distances. Some of the temp jobs that he had were out by Jelly Belly and out by I-94, if people don't know where that is. Anton's, that's like Cooper Road or something. And so miles he would go on a skateboard.
And was this a hobby of his? Would he compete in skateboarding events to the extent you know?
That I don't know. I was sometimes supporter of his habit.
Okay.
So, he would talk to me a lot about it. He would send me videos and things, but I really didn't follow whether he was competing. I know when he was younger, meaning 18, 19, he was actively looking for sponsors and things. That was something he was interested in, but that never materialized.
No, were you finished? I'm sorry.
Oh, and I know that as he got older, one of his pipe dreams, he had told me, was that he had a vision for an indoor skate park downtown Kenosha, and
So skateboarding was central to his character. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
Now I'd like to draw your attention or bring you to late August of 2020. Were you living in Kenosha at that time?
Yes.
And are you aware of the shooting of Jacob Blake and the events that followed that shooting?
Yes.
And during that time frame, did Mr. Huber contact you?
Yes.
And when's the first time did you guys have like daily contact, or how did this come about?
Well, that whole weekend, a few days before, and then certainly after Jacob was shot, we had frequent contact during that period.
And did Mr. Huber have any special interest in the Jacob Blake shooting or the events that followed?
Yes.
And what was that special interest?
He told me that he knew Jacob. We had, Anthony would sometimes want to go with me out to Petrifying Springs. There's a memorial bench there that is dedicated to my son who
Right.
passed away. And after Jacob was shot, Anthony wanted to go out there with me. And while we were there, he told me he had known Jacob. I frankly don't recall how well he knew him. I mean, it just sticks in my memory that he said he knew him. That was the reason why we went out that day. He knew that Jacob had children. He knew, I remember him mentioning a few things about Jacob's life.
Let me ask you a question.
Sure.
Did you know Jacob Blake?
I did not.
All right. Now, so what day did you go to this? You said a memorial bench for your son,
Mm-hmm.
and was that someone that Anthony Huber was close to?
Yes.
And what day did you go to this memorial bench?
I believe it was Monday.
And that's when he told you about that he knew Jacob Blake, and you
Yeah.
discussed his feelings about the protests and all that.
Yes.
Do you know if he had gone out on any on any night to engage in a protest?
I know he had gone. He had taken his phone. He told me he was just wanting to take some videos.
Now, it's been established that Anthony died on the late night of August 25th. Did you see him anytime that day?
Yes.
Why did you see him?
He stopped with Hannah late in the afternoon, maybe 3:30, 4 o'clock. They were on their way to do a lot of errands, and he stopped to, I think I gave him some mail, and he was on his way to a cell phone store. I gave him some cash because he needed to resolve some things with his cell phone.
Now, is this something that you would do? Would you occasionally give him money?
Mm-hmm.
And did he have a driver's license? Did he know how to drive?
Yeah, he got his driver's license the day of his birthday, the Friday before.
Okay. And who would go practice driving with him and things of that nature?
That was me.
You mentioned a Hannah. Who's Hannah?
Hannah was his girlfriend.
So, do you recall approximately what time of day that you saw Anthony that on August 25th?
Like I said, I think 3:30, 4 o'clock. I remember it being later in the afternoon because we had a conversation about the traffic, and I reminded him he needed to get back in town before curfew.
And then with that, did they depart?
Yeah.
And was
Well,
Hannah,
no, excuse me. Was that the? Can you repeat that question?
Then they left after you said be back by curfew. Is that then
Yeah,
they left to go
yeah.
to the store?
Yeah.
Or wherever they went. Was Hannah driving at that point?
I think it was Hannah's car, but Anthony was driving.
Now, we've seen video here, and you may have seen video as well, that Anthony Huber ran towards Kyle Rittenhouse while Kyle Rittenhouse was armed. Were you surprised when you heard about that? Were you surprised by his actions?
Sustained.
Had you ever seen Anthony Huber run towards danger?
Yes.
Sustained.
As to which ground?
Both. Well, maybe, certainly on the second ground. Habit or custom.
We've heard nothing but having a custom evidence in this case.
Pardon me?
We've heard nothing but having a custom evidence. I think I can rehabilitate.
Well, first off, you don't need to comment on the ruling. Secondly, they're different rules. And we've been talking about this all along. There are different rules. Let's take a break. Please don't talk about the case. Lunch is here. And read, watch, or listen to any account of the trial. And we'll aim for about 12:30.
The court know what we're getting into.
Mr. Mayor's not here. Do you want to wait or?
No,
or-
he's given me permission to drive the
Okay.
car.
All right. Go ahead.
So just so the court knows where we're going, and it may or may not impact the ruling, we're going to be talking about a specific incident when Mr. Huber was a child, in which he ran to try to help stop an explosion at a family gathering. That's what we're getting into. And it's not a general, he was a good guy kind of thing. It's a specific act to rebut that Anthony Huber was going to attack Kyle Rittenhouse, VC of Morris. He was going to try and save people from Kyle Rittenhouse. That's our basis, and I just want you to know where we're going. Legally, I think that's permitted.
Okay. Defense?
Excuse me, Judge. I would argue that's not a character trait for peacefulness, first of all. But if it comes in, then I'm going to ask the court under 90405 to allow specific instances to rebut that, which is allowed under 90405 sub 1. I have 2 criminal complaints involving Mr. Huber where he caused physical harm to other people. And I think if they're going to lay forth or try to lay forth opinion evidence on peacefulness, 90405 allows me to rebut that on cross-examination with specific instances of conduct. But overall, I don't think running to something is a character trait for peacefulness, in my opinion. So that's what I would ask the court to consider.
Okay. Well, I looked in the books. And Colonel McCormick section, and this, we don't update a lot of these things anymore. This is from 1990. The laws of evidence don't change that fast, although there's been change to this rule fairly recent. And I actually, one of the issues I didn't get to yet, and may not have to, is whether on the particular points we're going to talk about, whether the federal and Wisconsin rules are alike, because there's been somewhat of a change. But this is from 1992, and it's Section 193, Colonel McCormick, a well-established exception to the rule forbidding character evidence to prove conduct applies to homicide and assault cases in which there is a dispute as to who was the first aggressor. This exception permits the accused in such cases to introduce appropriate evidence of the victim's character for turbulence and violence. In response, the prosecution may adduce evidence that the victim was a characteristically peaceful person. So it says that the accused can offer evidence of the defendant's character, of Mr. Huber's character for turbulence and violence. They haven't done that. They've introduced evidence of specific acts of Mr. Huber. And that sentence, the second sentence I read, is in response, the prosecution may adduce evidence that the victim was characteristically a peaceful person. So you're responding to something that hasn't been offered, which is character evidence about Mr. Huber. Now, if I read to the revision from 1974 of the federal rule, evidence of a pertinent trait of character of the victim of the crime offered by the accused or by the prosecution to rebut the same. And again, rebut would be in reference to the evidence of a pertinent trait of character, which has not been offered by the defense. Or character trait of peacefulness of the victim offered by the prosecution in a homicide case to rebut evidence that the defendant was the first aggressor. So it says evidence, it doesn't say character. So that second phrase seems to suggest that the prosecution can offer evidence in a homicide case to rebut evidence that the defendant was the first aggressor. Wait a minute. Let me look at that again. And respond. Or evidence of the character trait of peacefulness of the victim offered by the prosecution in a homicide case to rebut evidence that the defendant was the first aggressor. So,
Are you reading that right, Judge?
I hope so, because I read it the first time and I questioned whether I had. Let's see. Or evidence of the character trait of peacefulness of Mr. Huber offered by the state in a homicide case to rebut evidence that Mr. Rittenhouse was the first aggressor.
I have victim was the first aggressor.
Well, I'm reading from, and I'll try one more time. Here, wait.
It's victim.
Wait. What?
We agree that victim was the first aggressor.
And I'm going to offer as an exhibit here, just to say that my eyes are not failing that badly. You can look at it yourself. It says defendant. So much for that book. You can look at it yourself. It's there. All right. No wonder we didn't renew that book. You could make a big mistake with that. Let's read from my favorite, which is Judge Weinstein, who says, and this is at 701(3)(c) that we've talked about before. When the defendant offers evidence of the alleged victim's character, then the prosecution is entitled not only to offer rebutting evidence about the victim's character, but also introduce evidence that the defendant has the same character trait. So it starts off when the defendant offers evidence of the alleged victim's character, which hasn't been done.
That's the first part of that statute, not the second.
Well, the second part, if we're talking about this, I'm talking about 2B, which is going to be one, when they do these transpositions of the numbers. What are you offering it under? You tell me the statute you're offering it under.
I'm
I
offering
thought it was 1B.
90404 1B, but there's two provisions in there.
I know there are.
Okay, we're talking about the second, which is the character trait of peacefulness of the victim offered by the prosecution in a homicide case to rebut evidence that the victim was the first aggressor.
Right. And that is a more sweeping statement than the older material before. I think it's a 1974 revision. Anyway, there was disagreement in the other one I used was the Graham Handbook of Federal Evidence, and there's disagreement. So when I walked out here, I thought, well, I think I'm going to resolve the tie in favor of the state. Now, you're forewarning them that you have got some other crimes or some contrary evidence. I guess rebutting evidence that we might as well talk about now rather than have to excuse the jury again. Are you prepared for what the defense suggests they're going to offer?
Yes, I don't believe the incident in which an individual runs to try to help or try to save people brings in completely irrelevant criminal acts that have already been barred.
It's character traits for peacefulness is what they're getting into. I have 2 criminal complaints, one of which the defendant held a knife to his brother's throat. He put a knife to his brother's ear. He called him. He said he would gut him like a.
He said what?
Mr. Huber told his brother that if he didn't start cleaning a room in their house, he was going to gut him like a pig. Mr. Huber's brother noticed a knife in Mr. Huber's right hand that looked like a butcher knife, 6 inches long with a green handle. Mr. Huber later on in the same incident threw a chair and some clothes across the room, threatening to kill his brother if he didn't clean. Mr. Huber then sat down with the knife in his hand and watched them while his brother and Mr. Huber made his grandmother pick things up as well. And Mr. Huber told his brother that if he stopped cleaning, he would kill him. Mr. Huber's brother then turned around and Mr. Huber put a knife to his brother's stomach, saying he was going to gut him like a pig. Mr. Huber's brother bent down to try to protect himself. Mr. Huber then grabbed his brother by the neck, dug his nails in, and choked him for approximately 10 seconds. He then put a knife to his brother's left ear. His brother felt the blade and believed his ear was cut. And then as he left, he told the people in the house, "I'm going to burn the house down with all you fuckers in it." That's what Mr. Huber had said in that instance. And that is charged in Kenosha County case 12 CF 1346. He has another criminal...
What was the outcome? And what was it, 12 CF?
12 CF 1346. I believe he entered a plea to strangulation and suffocation in that case.
Okay.
I have a 18 CM 509 case in which he kicked what I believe is his sister, Susan Hughes, in the right hip, causing her pain and causing her to fall into a nearby dog crate. So I would normally not move to admit those. However, if they're saying that this is a peaceful man, and if you say, Judge, running to this area to stop whatever was happening, it's not a fight or there's no violence, it doesn't sound like. But if you're saying that's peaceful, 90405 allows me to get into specific instances on cross.
I know that.
So,
I could respond. I believe 90405.
Just start over.
Sure. I believe 90405 allows specific instances of conduct of the individual being cross-examined, which we obviously cannot do. This I don't know how they would get this in. I guess.
Wait a minute. What do you mean? What do you can't? The individual being cross-examined will be the person who's giving the opinion. I tried this case, State against King, right here in this room when I was district attorney, 1974, 75. Mr. King shot his wife in the eye and killed her, and there was testimony. Well, the bottom line was that I was allowed when the an opinion had been expressed about the character for peacefulness of the accused, and on cross-examination I inquired, would your opinion change if you knew thus and so about Mr. King? And there was objection because it was a specific instance, and the Supreme Court said that was permissible inquiry because the opinion had been rendered, and the wealth of knowledge of the opinion giver was therefore subject to scrutiny as to how much information this person actually knew, because the character you're trying to present isn't limited to just an incident involving a fire at some point in time, but is limited to the entire character of the decedent. So my initial inclination would be this is probably admissible. Probably. And if you go ahead with the evidence, and you're welcome to do so, although the defense has also pointed out correctly that the character is for peaceableness, and what you were talking about was more heroism. So, but I think I'll give you that much. But you're forewarned. I'm going to be taking another look at that King case because it's been a long time. But this sounds like something that he'll be allowed to go into.
Understand?
What do you want to do?
I will not submit the evidence.
You what?
I will withdraw that question and not submit the evidence.
You'll withdraw that question and?
I'm not going to elicit that testimony.
Okay, do you want Mrs. Hughes back on the stand?
Yes, there's still just a couple more questions. They obviously have to cross-examine her.
Okay. Are we ready for the jury? Would you come down, please?
Yes.
Mr. Schroff, say what?
Just putting your book back. I want to witness.
Good afternoon, everybody. We had some additional discussion on the issues that were pending, and it has been decided the state has decided to withdraw the question which was asked.
Settled in? Okay. Ms. Hughes, the night of August 25th, or into the morning of August 26th, when or how did you hear about what had happened to Anthony?
I got a text around midnight, maybe a little after, from Anthony's girlfriend Hannah, saying...
Oh, we don't need to get into the context of it. That would be
Okay.
called hearsay. And then did you ever receive any further communication about... let me ask it this way. When did you find out that he had died?
Much later. It was maybe 5:30 in the morning.
And how old was Anthony when he died?
He had turned 26 a couple days before.
Ma'am, I'd like you to look at there's an item in front of you which I've turned over. I'd ask you to turn it over to look at it. It's marked as State's Exhibit 44. Do you recognize that?
Yes.
What is that?
This is a photo of Anthony as an adult and Anthony as a child with his skateboard.
And are those pictures you provided to my office?
Yes.
Are those true and accurate copies of how Anthony looked in childhood and as an adult?
Mm-hmm.
I'd ask that 44 be entered into evidence and published to the jury by being passed around.
Is there objection?
There is not.
Okay, go ahead.
That's all the questions I have. I'll give it over.
And he can do it.
I'll do it.
Yeah, thank you.
Sure.
Did you have questions?
I have no questions for Ms. Hughes.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. You may step down.
Thank you.
Carrie Ann.